The sun was setting over the city of Chicago, painting the sky with streaks of orange and pink. The streets were alive with the hum of traffic, the chatter of pedestrians, and the distant sound of a street musician playing a soulful tune on his saxophone. It was an ordinary evening in the Windy City, but for Daniel Carter, it would soon turn into the most terrifying night of his life. Daniel Carter was no stranger to success. At 42, he had built an empire from the ground up. His tech company, Innovatech, was worth billions, and its products were used by millions around the world. He lived in a sprawling penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan, drove luxury cars, and wore suits tailored to perfection. But none of these things mattered as much to him as his wife, Rachel, and the baby they were expecting. Rachel was 6 months pregnant, glowing with happiness as she prepared for the arrival of their first child. She had just finished her prenatal yoga class and was heading to her car when everything changed. As she walked through the parking lot, a black van pulled up beside her. Before she could react, 2 men jumped out, grabbed her, and dragged her into the vehicle. The whole thing happened so fast that no one noticed until it was too late. Back at home, Daniel was pacing nervously. Rachel was usually punctual, but tonight she was running late. He tried calling her phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Something didn't feel right. His stomach churned with unease as he stared at the clock, willing it to move faster. Finally, unable to wait any longer, he decided to drive to the yoga studio to check on her. When he arrived, the parking lot was empty, except for a few scattered cars. There was no sign of Rachel or her car. Panic began to rise in his chest. He called her name, hoping against hope that she might be nearby, but there was no response. Just as he was about to leave, he spotted something on the ground, a piece of jewelry. It was Rachel's bracelet, the one he had given her on their 5th wedding anniversary. His heart sank. This wasn't like her. She never took it off. Daniel's mind raced with possibilities, each more horrifying than the last. Had she been in an accident? Was she hurt somewhere? Or worse? The thought made him sick to his stomach. He called the police, explaining the situation in a voice trembling with fear. They promised to send officers to investigate, but warned him not to get his hopes up. These things took time. Hours passed, and still, there was no word. Daniel sat alone in his penthouse, staring blankly at the walls. Every ring of the phone sent a jolt of adrenaline through him, only to be followed by crushing disappointment when it wasn't the call he was waiting for. He felt helpless, a feeling he wasn't used to. For all his money and influence, he couldn't do anything to bring Rachel back. Then, just as dawn was breaking, his phone buzzed. It was a text message from an unknown number. His hands shook as he opened it. The message was short and cold. "If you want your wife back, pay $50 million in cryptocurrency. No cops. We'll contact you again." Attached to the message was a photo of Rachel, tied to a chair, her face pale and frightened. Her eyes seemed to beg for help. Daniel's world crumbled. He wanted to scream, to cry, to smash something, but he forced himself to stay calm. He knew that panicking wouldn't help Rachel. He needed to think clearly, to act fast. But what could he do? $50 million was a staggering amount, even for someone as wealthy as him. And who were these people? What did they want with his wife? Desperation drove him to seek help outside the usual channels. He remembered hearing rumors about a woman named Maya Johnson. She wasn't part of the police force or any official agency, but she had a reputation for solving problems others couldn't. People whispered about her skills, her resourcefulness, and her ability to get results when all else failed. Some said she was a former soldier. Others claimed she worked as a private investigator. No one really knew much about her, but everyone agreed on one thing: she got the job done. With nothing left to lose, Daniel reached out to her. After several calls and messages, he finally managed to speak with her directly. Her voice was calm and steady, devoid of the panic he felt. When he explained the situation, she listened carefully without interrupting. When he finished, there was a brief pause before she spoke. "I'll take the case," she said simply. "But I work on my terms. No interference, no questions. If you can agree to that, we'll find your wife." Daniel hesitated. Trusting a complete stranger felt risky, especially with so much at stake. But what choice did he have? The police were doing their best, but he knew they couldn't move as quickly or discreetly as Maya could. With a heavy sigh, he agreed. Maya arrived at his penthouse later that afternoon. She was younger than he expected, probably in her late 20s, with sharp features and an air of quiet confidence. Her dark skin glowed under the soft light, and her piercing brown eyes seemed to see right through him. She carried herself with purpose, every movement deliberate and controlled. Daniel couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope as he watched her assess the situation. She asked him to show her everything he had, the text message, the photo, Rachel's bracelet, anything that might provide a clue. As she examined each item, her expression remained unreadable. When she was done, she turned to him and said, "I'll need access to your security footage and any contacts you have who can help trace the ransom demand. Time is critical here." Daniel nodded, grateful for her professionalism. He handed over the information she requested and stepped aside, letting her take charge. For the first time since Rachel's disappearance, he felt like someone actually knew what they were doing. As Maya began her work, Daniel retreated to his study, overwhelmed by guilt and fear. He replayed the events of the past day in his mind, searching for anything he might have missed. Why had Rachel been targeted? Was it because of his wealth, his business dealings, or was it something else entirely? He thought about their life together, the ups and downs, the laughter and tears. Rachel had always been his rock, the one person who grounded him when the pressures of his career threatened to consume him. Now she was gone, and it was all his fault. If only he had been there with her, maybe this wouldn't have happened. Outside, the city continued its restless rhythm, oblivious to the drama unfolding inside Daniel's penthouse. Cars honked, sirens wailed, and people hurried along the sidewalks, wrapped up in their own lives. But for Daniel, the world had shrunk to a single, agonizing question. Would he ever see Rachel again? Maya worked tirelessly throughout the night, piecing together fragments of evidence and following leads. By morning, she had narrowed down a list of possible locations where Rachel might be held. She briefed Daniel on her findings, her tone firm but reassuring. "We're close," she said, "but we need to move carefully. One wrong step, and they could hurt her." Daniel swallowed hard, nodding in agreement. He trusted her judgment completely now. Whatever it took, he would do it. Money, resources, connections. He would give her everything she needed to bring Rachel home safely. And so, with Maya leading the way, the search entered a new phase. The stakes were higher than ever, and the clock was ticking. Somewhere in the vast sprawl of Chicago, Rachel was counting on them to find her. And Daniel prayed with every fiber of his being that they wouldn't be too late. The morning sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Daniel's penthouse, casting long shadows across the room. Maya sat at the dining table, surrounded by papers, maps, and a laptop humming softly. Her brow was furrowed in concentration as she sifted through the evidence she had gathered overnight. Daniel hovered nearby, his hands gripping the back of a chair so tightly that his knuckles turned white. He wanted to ask questions, to demand answers, but he forced himself to stay silent. Maya had made it clear. She worked best without interruptions. After what felt like hours, Maya finally looked up. "I found something," she said, her voice calm but firm. She pointed to a grainy image on her laptop screen. It was a still frame from the security footage taken near the parking lot where Rachel had been abducted. In the background, barely visible, was a black van parked awkwardly along the curb. The license plate was obscured, but the van had a distinctive dent on its rear bumper. "This van shows up just before your wife disappears," Maya explained. "It leaves shortly after. I'm almost certain this is how they took her." Daniel leaned closer, studying the image. His heart raced as he imagined Rachel being dragged into that vehicle. He clenched his fists, trying to push away the anger and fear bubbling inside him. "Do you know who owns it?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Not yet," Maya replied. "But I've got a few leads. There's also this. She tapped another part of the screen, zooming in on a figure standing near the van. The person wore a hoodie and gloves even though it had been a warm evening. This guy looks suspicious. Gloves in summer? That's not normal. Maya explained that she had already reached out to some of her contacts, people who specialized in tracking vehicles and identifying patterns. One of them had flagged a similar van spotted in a different part of the city earlier that week. It seemed the kidnappers had been planning this for days, maybe even weeks. While Maya worked on tracing the van, Daniel couldn't sit still. He paced back and forth, replaying every detail of the past 24 hours in his mind. He thought about Rachel, the way she smiled when she talked about their baby, the way she teased him for working too much. How could anyone do this to her? To them? Maya noticed his agitation and spoke gently. You need to focus, Daniel. Worrying won't help her. Right now, we need to think clearly and act fast. Her words grounded him, if only slightly. He nodded and took a deep breath. What can I do? He asked. For now, stay out of my way, she said bluntly. But I'll need access to your resources. If I find something, I might need you to make calls or send money quickly. Can you handle that? Yes, Daniel replied without hesitation. Whatever you need. With that, Maya returned to her work, leaving Daniel to stew in his thoughts. He wandered to the window and stared out at the city below. Chicago was bustling with life, oblivious to the nightmare unfolding in one of its wealthiest neighborhoods. Cars honked, people laughed, and children played in the parks. None of them knew what he was going through. None of them cared. Hours passed, and Maya's efforts began to bear fruit. One of her contacts identified the van as belonging to a rental company based in a rough part of town. Using the company's records, she traced it to a man named Marcus who had rented the vehicle under a fake ID. Further digging revealed that Marcus had ties to an underground organization known for extortion, smuggling, and other illegal activities. When Maya shared this information with Daniel, his face went pale. An organization? He repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. Why would they target Rachel? It's probably not about her, Maya said. It's about you. These groups don't care about innocent people. They see them as leverage. They're using her to get to you. Daniel sank into a chair, his head in his hands. He knew exactly what she meant. Over the years, he had crossed paths with dangerous individuals while building his empire. Some deals had gone sour. Others had ended in betrayal. He had always assumed he was untouchable, protected by his wealth and influence. Now he realized how wrong he had been. Maya continued her investigation, narrowing down potential locations where Rachel might be held. She focused on abandoned warehouses, industrial zones, and remote areas where no one would hear screams. She cross-referenced these places with recent reports of suspicious activity and came up with 3 possible sites. As night fell, Maya prepared to move. She packed a small bag with tools, a flashlight, and a compact pistol. When Daniel saw the gun, his eyes widened. Are you going alone? He asked, panic creeping into his voice. I have to, she said. If I bring anyone else, it increases the risk of being spotted. Trust me, I know what I'm doing. But what if something happens to you? Daniel pressed. What if they hurt you, or worse? Maya met his gaze, her expression unwavering. Then you'll have to trust that I left enough clues for someone else to pick up where I left off. But I don't plan on failing. Her confidence gave Daniel a shred of hope, though it did little to ease his anxiety. He watched as she slipped on a dark jacket and adjusted the strap of her bag. Be careful, he said, his voice cracking. Please. She nodded once, then turned and walked out the door. For a moment, Daniel stood frozen, unsure of what to do next. Finally, he pulled out his phone and dialed the police, updating them on Maya's progress. They promised to keep officers on standby, ready to act if needed. Meanwhile, Maya navigated the shadowy streets of Chicago, heading toward the first location on her list, an old warehouse near the docks. The area was deserted, lit only by flickering streetlights and the occasional glow of a passing car. She parked several blocks away and approached the building on foot, moving silently and keeping to the shadows. The warehouse loomed ahead, its windows boarded up and its walls covered in graffiti. Maya circled the perimeter, checking for signs of life. She spotted a faint light coming from inside and heard muffled voices. Her pulse quickened, but she remained calm. Carefully, she slipped through a gap in the fence and crept closer. Inside, the air smelled of rust and decay. Piles of discarded machinery and crates littered the floor, providing plenty of cover. Maya moved cautiously, avoiding loose debris that might give away her position. As she rounded a corner, she saw two men guarding a metal door. They were armed, their faces hard and unsmiling. Maya crouched behind a stack of crates, observing them. She couldn't take them both on directly, not without risking exposure. Instead, she decided to create a distraction. Pulling a small device from her bag, she activated it and tossed it toward the far end of the warehouse. A loud clanging noise echoed through the space, startling the guards. They exchanged confused glances before heading off to investigate. Seizing the opportunity, Maya slipped past them and opened the metal door. Inside, she found Rachel sitting on a chair, her hands bound with rope and a gag covering her mouth. Her eyes widened in shock when she saw Maya, but she remained quiet, nodding slightly to indicate she was okay. Maya moved swiftly, cutting the ropes with a pocket knife. "Stay quiet," she whispered. "We need to get out of here." Rachel nodded again, tears streaming down her face. Maya helped her to her feet and guided her toward the exit. Just as they reached the doorway, however, one of the guards returned, spotting them immediately. "Hey!" he shouted, raising his weapon. Thinking fast, Maya pushed Rachel behind a pile of crates and stepped forward, holding her hands up in surrender. "Let her go," she said evenly. "She's pregnant. You don't want to hurt her." The guard hesitated, glancing between Maya and Rachel. Before he could decide, his partner appeared, pointing a gun at Maya's chest. "Who are you?" he demanded. "That doesn't matter," Maya said, her voice steady. "What matters is that you let her go. This isn't about her. It's about Daniel Carter. He's the one you want." The two men exchanged a glance, then lowered their weapons slightly. "Fine," the first guard growled. "Take her, but tell Carter we're serious. We want our money." Maya didn't waste another second. She grabbed Rachel's hand and led her out of the warehouse, keeping low until they reached safety. Once outside, Rachel collapsed into sobs, clutching her stomach protectively. Maya wrapped an arm around her, guiding her toward the car. Back at Daniel's penthouse, the reunion was emotional. Rachel burst through the door, throwing herself into Daniel's arms. He held her tightly, tears streaming down his face as he kissed her forehead and murmured words of comfort. For the first time in hours, he allowed himself to breathe. Maya stood quietly in the background, watching the scene unfold. She felt a pang of satisfaction knowing she had done her job. But there was still work to be done. The kidnappers were still out there, and they wouldn't stop until they got what they wanted. As Daniel thanked her profusely, Maya raised a hand to stop him. "Don't thank me yet," she said. "This isn't over. They'll come after you again unless we deal with them properly." Daniel nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "What do we do next?" he asked. "We prepare," Maya replied, "and we strike back." With those words, she turned and walked out, leaving Daniel and Rachel to cherish their brief moment of relief. Little did they know, the hardest part was still to come. The night was quiet, but the tension in Daniel's penthouse was thick enough to cut with a knife. Rachel sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, her hands resting protectively over her belly. She looked exhausted, her face pale and drawn, but she was safe. For now. Daniel hovered nearby, unable to take his eyes off her. Every time she shifted or winced, he tensed as if expecting something terrible to happen again. Maya stood by the window, staring out at the city lights. Her expression was calm, but her mind was racing. The rescue had been successful. Rachel was home. But Maya knew they weren't out of danger yet. The kidnappers had let Rachel go, but only because they thought they still held all the cards. They would come after Daniel again, and next time they might not be so forgiving. "We need to talk," Maya said finally, turning to face them. Her voice was steady, but there was an urgency in her tone that made both Daniel and Rachel look up. "What do you mean?" Daniel asked, his brow furrowing. "Rachel's safe. Isn't that enough?" "For now," Maya replied. "But they're not done with you. These people don't give up easily. If we don't deal with them properly, they'll keep coming back." Rachel shivered, pulling the blanket tighter around herself. "What do they want from us?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Why did they take me?" "It's not about you," Maya explained gently. "It's about your husband. These guys are part of an organization that doesn't play fair. They see you as leverage, a way to get what they want from him." Daniel clenched his fists, guilt washing over him. He had always known his success came with risks, but he never imagined it would put Rachel in danger. "What do we do?" he asked, his voice heavy with frustration. "How do we stop them?" Maya crossed the room and sat down across from them. "First, we need to understand who we're dealing with. This isn't just a random group of criminals. They're organized, smart, and dangerous. From what I've gathered, they've been watching you for a while, waiting for the right moment to strike." Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. "Watching me? For how long?" "Long enough," Maya said grimly. "They know your routines, your habits, your weaknesses. That's how they knew where to find Rachel. But here's the thing, they underestimated one thing: you care too much. And that gives us an advantage." Rachel frowned, confused. "How does that help us?" "It means they don't expect you to fight back," Maya explained. "They think you'll pay the ransom and stay quiet. But if we hit them where it hurts, we can end this once and for all." Daniel leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "What exactly are you suggesting?" "We take the fight to them," Maya said firmly. "We gather evidence, expose their operation, and shut them down. It won't be easy and it won't be quick, but it's the only way to make sure they never bother you again." Rachel looked at Daniel, fear in her eyes. "Is that safe? What if something goes wrong?" "I won't let anything happen to either of you," Maya promised. "But we have to act fast. Every second we wait gives them more time to regroup." Daniel nodded slowly, determination replacing the fear in his chest. "Okay," he said. "Tell me what to do." The next morning, Daniel woke up feeling a strange mix of emotions. Relief that Rachel was safe clashed with the weight of what lay ahead. He glanced at her as she slept soundly beside him, her breathing steady and calm. The dark circles under her eyes were still visible, but she looked peaceful for the first time in days. He wanted nothing more than to shield her from harm, to keep her and their baby safe forever. Maya arrived early, carrying a bag filled with gadgets, documents, and a laptop. She wasted no time getting to work. "We've got a lot to do," she said, setting up her equipment on the dining table. "First, we need to gather as much information as possible about these people. Names, locations, connections, anything we can use against them." Daniel nodded, ready to follow her lead. "What do you need me to do?" "For starters, I need access to your company's security system," Maya replied. "If they've been watching you, there's a good chance they've hacked into your network. We need to find out how deep they've gone." Daniel hesitated. Giving someone access to his company's data felt risky, even if it was Maya. But he reminded himself that she had already proven herself trustworthy. "Okay," he said finally. "I'll have my IT team set you up." "Good," Maya said. "While you handle that, I'll go through the evidence we collected last night. There might be something we missed." As Daniel made the necessary calls, Maya began reviewing the surveillance footage and other materials. She replayed the video of the kidnapper's van multiple times, pausing at key moments to zoom in on details. Her sharp eyes caught things most people would overlook: a tattoo on one man's wrist, a logo on a jacket, a license plate partially visible beneath dirt. Each clue brought her closer to identifying the group behind the abduction. Rachel joined them later, looking stronger but still shaken. "Can I help?" she asked softly. "I feel useless just sitting here." Maya gave her a reassuring smile. "You're not useless. You're staying safe. That's helping." But if you remember anything about the men who took you, anything at all, let me know. Rachel thought for a moment, then shook her head. They wore masks. I didn't see their faces, but one of them had a scar on his hand, a long one near his thumb. Maya's eyes lit up. That's useful. Thank you. She jotted down the detail, adding it to her growing list of leads. By midday, Daniel returned with news from his IT team. They had detected unusual activity in the company's servers over the past few weeks. Someone had been monitoring emails, financial transactions, and even private communications. It was clear the kidnappers had been planning this for some time. They knew everything, Daniel muttered, running a hand through his hair. Every meeting, every deal, every move I made, they were always one step ahead. It's not your fault, Maya said firmly. These people are professionals. That's why we need to be smarter than them. With access to the compromised data. Maya dug deeper, piecing together fragments of information. She discovered that the organization wasn't just targeting Daniel. They were using him as part of a larger scheme. Over the years, Innovatech had developed cutting-edge technology that could be weaponized if it fell into the wrong hands. The kidnappers weren't after money. They wanted access to Daniel's innovations. This changes things, Maya said, showing Daniel the evidence. They're not just criminals, they're mercenaries working for someone bigger. If we don't stop them, they'll sell your tech to the highest bidder. Daniel's stomach churned. His inventions, meant to improve lives, could instead cause destruction. What do we do now? He asked, his voice heavy with dread. We hit them where it hurts. Their operation, Maya replied. But we need proof, hard evidence that ties them to illegal activities. Without that, we can't expose them. Over the next few hours, Maya worked tirelessly, tracing the kidnappers' digital footprints. She uncovered a series of encrypted messages between members of the organization, detailing plans for smuggling weapons and selling stolen technology. She also found addresses for several hideouts, including the warehouse where Rachel had been held. We can't take them all down at once, Maya explained, but if we raid one location, we can gather enough evidence to bring the entire operation crashing down. Daniel nodded, though his expression remained grim. And what about Rachel and me? What happens if they come after us again? That's why we act fast, Maya said. Once we move, they won't have time to retaliate. Trust me, I'll make sure you're protected. That night, Maya prepared for the raid. She packed her bag with tools, a flashlight, and a small pistol. Before leaving, she turned to Daniel and Rachel. Stay here, she instructed. Don't leave the penthouse no matter what. I'll call when it's done. Daniel wanted to protest, to insist on going with her, but he knew it was better to stay behind. Instead, he handed her an envelope containing cash and additional resources she might need. Thank you, he said sincerely, for everything. Maya nodded and left without another word. The warehouse loomed in the darkness, its silhouette jagged against the night sky. Maya parked several blocks away and approached on foot, moving silently through the shadows. She had memorized the layout of the building, thanks to satellite images and blueprints obtained earlier. Inside, she knew there would be guards, weapons, and potentially incriminating documents. Using a small device, Maya disabled the security cameras surrounding the warehouse. Then she slipped inside through a side door, careful to avoid making noise. The interior was dimly lit, filled with crates and machinery. She moved cautiously, her senses alert for any sign of movement. She soon found what she was looking for, a locked room marked restricted access. Picking the lock with practiced ease, she stepped inside and switched on her flashlight. The room was filled with files, laptops, and hard drives. Quickly, she began copying data onto a portable drive, taking care not to disturb anything else. Just as she finished, she heard footsteps approaching. Thinking fast, Maya hid behind a stack of boxes and waited. 2 men entered the room, speaking in low voices. They're getting impatient, one of them said. Carter hasn't paid yet. What do we do? We wait, the other replied. He'll crack eventually. If not, we take the wife again. Or worse. Maya's jaw tightened. She couldn't let them hurt Rachel or Daniel. As the men turned to leave, she stepped out from her hiding spot, her pistol raised. "Stop right there," she commanded. The men froze, their eyes widening in shock. One of them reached for his gun, but Maya was faster. "Don't," she warned. "You're outnumbered and outsmarted. Drop your weapons." Reluctantly, they obeyed, raising their hands in surrender. Maya tied them up with zip ties and called the police, giving them anonymous tips about the warehouse and its contents. Gay. The time officers arrived, she was long gone, slipping back into the night like a ghost. Back at the penthouse, Maya returned just before dawn, her face streaked with dirt, but her eyes shining with triumph. "It's done," she told Daniel and Rachel. "I got what we needed. Now it's only a matter of time before the authorities shut them down." Daniel exhaled deeply, relief washing over him. For the first time in days, he allowed himself to believe that the nightmare was truly ending. Rachel hugged Maya tightly, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered. "We owe you everything." Maya smiled softly. "You don't owe me anything. Just promise me one thing. Stay safe." As the sun rose over Chicago, casting golden light across the city, Daniel and Rachel stood together on the balcony, holding each other close. The danger wasn't entirely gone, but they felt a renewed sense of hope. With Maya's help, they had faced their fears and emerged stronger. And somewhere in the distance, Maya disappeared into the bustling streets, ready to take on whatever challenge came next. The days that followed the raid on the warehouse were a blur of activity. Maya handed over the evidence she had gathered to trusted contacts within law enforcement, people who could be counted on to act discreetly and effectively. Within hours, police raids swept through multiple locations tied to the organization, seizing weapons, stolen technology, and stacks of incriminating documents. The media erupted with headlines about the takedown of a major criminal network, though the full story remained hidden from public view. For Daniel and Rachel, it was a moment of quiet relief, knowing that the people who had threatened their lives were finally being brought to justice. But Maya didn't stop there. She knew that dismantling the organization was only half the battle. The real challenge lay in ensuring that something like this would never happen again, not just to Daniel and Rachel, but to anyone else who might become a target. As she sat in Daniel's penthouse reviewing the final pieces of evidence, she turned to him with a thoughtful expression. "You've got a lot of power," Maya said, her voice calm but firm. "Money, influence, resources. What are you going to do with it now?" Daniel frowned, unsure of what she meant. "What do you mean? I thought this was over." "It is, for you," Maya replied. "But there are thousands of people out there who don't have the same advantage as you do. People who live in fear every day because they don't have the means to protect themselves or their families. You can change that." Daniel stared at her, his mind racing. He had always been focused on building his empire, climbing higher and higher in the world of business. But now, faced with the reality of how fragile life could be, he realized how much he had taken for granted. His wealth hadn't shielded him from danger. If anything, it had made him, and Rachel, a target. And yet Maya was right. There were others out there who didn't even have the basic safety nets he did. "What do you suggest?" he asked, his voice tinged with curiosity. Maya leaned forward, her eyes steady. "I grew up in a neighborhood where opportunities were scarce, where kids joined gangs because they didn't see another way out, where parents worked 2 or 3 jobs just to put food on the table, let alone dream of sending their kids to college. That's the kind of place I want you to help." Rachel, who had been listening quietly, nodded in agreement. "She's right, Daniel. We've been given so much, it's time we gave back." Daniel hesitated, his thoughts swirling. He had always assumed charity meant writing checks to big organizations, but this felt different. This was personal. He thought about Maya's words, the idea of creating real, lasting change instead of simply throwing money at problems. Finally, he looked at Maya and said, "Tell me what to do." Maya smiled faintly. "Start by rebuilding communities like mine. Fund education programs, job training initiatives, affordable housing projects, give people the tools they need to build better lives for themselves. And don't just throw money at it. Get involved. Listen to them. Learn from them. Over the next few weeks, Daniel threw himself into the project with a passion he hadn't felt in years. With Maya's guidance, he established a foundation dedicated to empowering underserved communities. They named it after Maya's late mother, Evelyn Johnson, who had inspired her to fight for justice. The foundation's mission was simple: to provide opportunities for those who needed them most. Together, Daniel, Rachel, and Maya traveled across the country, visiting schools, community centers, and neighborhoods in desperate need of support. They met with teachers, parents, and local leaders, listening to their stories and learning about the challenges they faced. In one town, they helped renovate a crumbling school building, providing new classrooms and supplies for students. In another, they launched a mentorship program connecting young people with professionals in fields they aspired to join. Maya became deeply involved in the foundation's work, mentoring young people and encouraging them to dream big. She often shared her own story, how she had grown up in poverty but refused to let it define her. Her resilience inspired countless others to believe in themselves and their ability to overcome adversity. For Daniel, the experience was transformative. He found joy in seeing the impact of their efforts, whether it was watching a child light up during a science experiment or hearing a single mother talk about how job training had helped her secure stable employment. It wasn't about the recognition or praise. It was about making a difference, however small, in someone's life. Rachel, too, embraced the cause wholeheartedly. Pregnant and exhausted as she was, she insisted on participating in every event and meeting. She loved meeting the families they were helping, especially the children. Often, she would sit down with them, chatting and laughing as if they were old friends. Her warmth and kindness left a lasting impression on everyone she met. As the months passed, the foundation gained momentum, attracting volunteers, donors, and partners eager to contribute. News outlets began covering their work, highlighting the positive changes happening in communities once written off as hopeless. People started to take notice, not just of the foundation, but of Daniel and Rachel themselves. They were no longer seen as distant billionaires living in a glass tower. They were human beings using their privilege to uplift others. One evening, as the sun set over Lake Michigan, Daniel stood on the balcony of his penthouse, reflecting on everything that had happened. Rachel joined him, resting her head on his shoulder. "Do you think we're doing enough?" she asked softly. "Probably not," Daniel admitted. "But we're trying, and that's more than I ever did before." Rachel smiled. "You've changed, Daniel. So much. I'm proud of you." He kissed her forehead, feeling a deep sense of gratitude, not just for Rachel and their unborn child, but for Maya, whose courage and compassion had shown him a new way to live. Meanwhile, Maya continued her work as a rescuer, taking on cases that others deemed impossible. Though she remained humble about her role in Daniel and Rachel's story, they never forgot what she had done for them. Whenever she visited, they welcomed her like family, inviting her to stay for meals and celebrations. She became a regular presence in their lives, offering advice and support whenever needed. When Rachel gave birth to a healthy baby boy, they named him Elijah, a name chosen in honor of Maya's strength and perseverance. As Daniel held his newborn son for the first time, tears streaming down his face, he whispered a silent thank you to Maya. Without her, none of this would have been possible. Life moved forward, filled with both challenges and triumphs. The scars of the past lingered, but they no longer defined Daniel and Rachel. Instead, they served as reminders of how far they had come and how much farther they could go together. And somewhere in the city, Maya walked the streets, ready to answer the ice call of anyone in need. Her journey was far from over, but she carried with her the knowledge that even the smallest acts of kindness could create ripples of change. For Daniel, Rachel, and countless others, she had already proven that true heroism wasn't about fame or glory. It was about standing up for what was right no matter the cost. Months had passed since the night Rachel was rescued, and life for Daniel, Rachel, and their newborn son Elijah had settled into a rhythm of gratitude and purpose. The foundation they had created in honor of Maya's mother continued to grow, touching lives in ways they never imagined. Schools were rebuilt, job training programs flourished, and families who once struggled to make ends meet now had hope for a brighter future. Daniel found himself waking up each morning with a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. For so long, his life had revolved around profit margins and boardroom meetings. Now it was about something bigger, about making a difference. He spent hours meeting with community leaders, reviewing project proposals, and visiting neighborhoods transformed by the foundation's work. Every smile, every thank you, reminded him of how much he had to be grateful for. Rachel, too, embraced her role as a mother and advocate. Though caring for Elijah kept her busy, she made time to visit schools and mentor young mothers. Her warmth and kindness became a beacon of hope for many women who felt overwhelmed by the challenges of raising children in difficult circumstances. She often told them, "You're stronger than you think, and you're not alone." Maya remained a constant presence in their lives, though she continued her work as a rescuer, taking on cases that others couldn't or wouldn't handle. Whenever she returned to Chicago, Daniel and Rachel insisted she stay with them. They treated her like family, inviting her to dinners, celebrations, and quiet evenings at home. Maya appreciated their generosity, but always reminded them that she didn't do what she did for recognition or reward. "I just want to help people," she would say simply. "That's all." One evening, Daniel decided to host a gala to celebrate the foundation's success. It was held at a grand venue overlooking the city, with hundreds of guests in attendance: politicians, celebrities, activists, and ordinary citizens whose lives had been changed by the foundation's work. The room buzzed with excitement as people mingled, sharing stories of transformation and triumph. As the event drew to a close, Daniel took the stage to deliver a speech. He stood behind the podium, looking out at the sea of faces before him. For a moment, he felt nervous, unsure of how to put everything he wanted to say into words. Then he saw Maya sitting near the front, her expression calm and encouraging. Taking a deep breath, he began to speak. "Tonight we gather to celebrate the incredible impact this foundation has had on countless lives," he said, his voice steady. "But I want to take a moment to talk about someone who made it all possible, someone who showed me what true courage looks like. Her name is Maya Johnson." The crowd turned to look at Maya, who shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She wasn't used to being the center of attention, and the weight of everyone's gaze made her uneasy. But Daniel pressed on, his words filled with emotion. "When my wife was taken from me, I felt powerless," he continued. "I had money, resources, influence, but none of it mattered. All I could think about was getting her back safely. Then Maya stepped in. She didn't ask for anything in return. She didn't hesitate. She risked her life to save Rachel, and she did it without expecting a single thing from me. That's the kind of person she is." He paused, his eyes glistening with tears. "But Maya didn't just save Rachel. She saved me. She opened my eyes to the world beyond my penthouse, to the struggles of people I had ignored for far too long. Because of her, I learned what it means to truly live, to give back, to care, to fight for justice. And because of her, this foundation exists." The room erupted in applause, but Daniel wasn't finished. He stepped away from the podium and walked over to where Maya sat. Extending a hand, he helped her to her feet and led her to the stage. Maya looked hesitant, but she allowed him to guide her. "Thank you," Daniel said, his voice breaking, "for everything. You've changed my life and the lives of so many others in ways I can never repay." Tears streamed down his face as he hugged her tightly. Maya stood stiffly at first, unused to such displays of affection, but eventually she relaxed and returned the embrace. When they pulled apart, she looked out at the audience, her expression softening. "It's not about me," she said finally, her voice clear and strong. "It's about all of us working together to create a better world. None of this would have been possible without the support of this community, The teachers, the parents, the volunteers, the donors. We're in this together. Her words resonated deeply with everyone in the room. As the applause died down, Daniel stepped back to the podium one last time. "There's one more thing I want to say," he announced. "When Maya first came to me, she asked for something unusual. She didn't ask for money or fame. She asked me to rebuild her community, to give opportunities to people who had been overlooked and forgotten. Tonight, I'm proud to say that we've done exactly that." He gestured toward a group of teenagers seated near the back of the room. They were students from a neighborhood program funded by the foundation, many of whom had gone on to earn scholarships and secure jobs. "These are the future leaders of our world," Daniel said. "And thanks to Maya, they have the tools they need to succeed." The teenagers stood up, smiling shyly as the crowd cheered. Maya watched them, her heart swelling with pride. This was why she did what she did. Not for recognition, but for moments like this. Moments when she could see the seeds of change taking root. After the gala ended, Daniel, Rachel, and Maya stayed behind to pack up. As they worked, Rachel turned to Maya with a warm smile. "You know," she said, "you're part of this family now, whether you like it or not." Maya chuckled softly. "I don't mind," she admitted. "You've given me a reason to believe in people again." They shared a quiet laugh, the bond between them stronger than ever. Outside, the city sparkled under the night sky, alive with possibility. For Daniel, Rachel, and Maya, the journey was far from over. There were still challenges to face, battles to fight, and lives to touch. But together, they knew they could overcome anything. As they left the venue, Daniel wrapped an arm around Rachel, holding Elijah close. Maya walked beside them, her steps light and confident. The road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but they faced it with hope, determination, and the unshakable belief that even in the darkest times, kindness and courage could light the way forward. And somewhere in the distance, the city hummed with life, a reminder that no matter how broken the world might seem, there was always room for healing, growth, and love.